Are you a Karen? What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Lowdown with D-Lo. It's your girl Delapo, aka D-Lo, aka The Name Means Wealth. Every Thursday, 8 o'clock, we be dropping. Drop. Hey, we be dropping. Hey, we be dropping. If you have not been watching, clearly you live under a rock, or you might just not want a good life. You like to suffer. Please subscribe. I understand hitting that red button can be intimidating sometimes, but guess what? Just over that horizon is a new world, and that's the Lowdown. I'm just here as your neighborhood friendly black hottie with another segment called How Not to Piss Off Black People. Let's get started. Are you white or a white passing POC? Do you find yourself in predominantly white spaces? Do you only have that one black friend that you just love to tokenize? Do you find yourself kind of uncomfortable when there's two or more black people in the room? Are you a Karen? If you answered yes to at least one of these questions, this video is for you. Number one, understand your privilege. We are not talking about how many dollar bills you got in the bank. I don't care if you got 2 M's or you got 1 0. You have privilege because of your skin color. The system is meant to benefit you. It disadvantages black and brown bodies. You do not have to experience irrational violence against you because of the basis of your color. Recognize that. That's all we're asking. We're asking a lot of other stuff, but just do that first. Number two, do the work. Read, discuss with your loved ones, especially in white spaces. Donate. There are a lot of organizations who are doing the groundwork. Dismantle. I'm not saying that you need to go run for president. Dismantle can be as simple as standing up for somebody at your work office, bringing people of color up to the ranks that they deserve. These are ways you can dismantle within your own spaces. And vote! No one in this country should think that they don't have a hand in putting in the work. It doesn't matter if you have 5 followers or 2 million. Number three, treat us right. I'm not saying you gotta like me. I'm not saying you gotta be my best friend. Treat me right. And no, having a black best friend is not an excuse or a cop-out for your poor behavior. Just treat people the way you want to be treated. We learned that when we were 2 years old. Let's stick to it. And one golden rule. Police, leave us the fuck alone. But all jokes aside, this is not a laughing matter at all. August 23rd, 2020, 3 months after George Floyd, this shit is still happening to us with Jacob Blake, the man and father of 3 sons who got shot in the back 7 times in front of his children. We built this country, and yet our lives are still not valued. We need to get serious. We need to recognize that in 2020, a huge monumental election is going to be happening. And I think you guys don't really understand that. This is a matter of the betterment of America or the inevitable sliding back of our country. We need to vote for hope. Black and brown bodies are getting killed every single day. We shouldn't be desensitized to this. Wake up, America. Something has to change. I am so excited to have the Chelsea Miller here. We met each other in the Jackie Robinson Foundation. Not only is she a businesswoman, entrepreneur, yes ladies, she made her own fashion line and she's getting her coins. But 2, she started a nonprofit freshman year in college, and bring it to 2020, she started Freedom March NYC, which is mobilizing youth-led civil rights organizations of our generation. She's just been recently featured in Vogue. She also was in Sierra's new music video called Melanin, literally interviewed by Anderson Cooper himself, the god. I can't keep up, all before the age of 25. So let's just recognize that. All of you, you're lazy. So am I. I'm realizing that. I'm really lazy. Let's get into the interview. I am so excited, Chelsea, for you to just be hopping on the Lowdown with D-Lo with me.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chelsea Miller. I am a 23-year-old, a civil rights activist, social impact strategist, public speaker, anything else that really connects to empowering women and girls of color and communities of color as a whole. When we talk about the criminal justice system, when we talk about educational equity, when we talk about what it looks like to really create sustainable pipelines for our youth to be at the center and the forefront of change, show up for Black women in particular. A lot of times we are spoken about as carrying movements, carrying communities, carrying households. There's one thing to be talked about. It's another thing to be given the tools and resources to create change. With that being said, I'm the co-founder of Freedom March NYC, which is a youth-led civil rights organization for our generation that came out of the George Floyd protest. I am also the co-founder of Women Everywhere Believe, which is a national leadership pipeline for women and girls of color. And before Freedom March and the George Floyd protest, that's what I was doing full time. I was one of the youngest interns in the Obama White House working on criminal justice reform and urban economic opportunity.
Honey, how have you done that in just 23 years? I kind of want to take it back a little bit farther into your life. You're first generation Jamaican. I'm a first gen kid too. My parents are by way of Nigeria. How would you say you think you navigate this country and why you're just so activated in your activism?
I don't know if I would necessarily say that it was the country as a whole that really inspired my activism, as it was more or less my upbringing. And so for me, being raised by a single mother of 6 and seeing, right, like my mom struggle and the experiences that she had coming into this country, we have to recognize that there is a tale of two Americas. The understanding of America that we see in our history textbooks that we learn in the 4th and 5th grade. And then there is the reality of America that we see when we navigate the streets that we walk 10 blocks in Morningside Heights. It's the difference between Columbia University and Harlem, in which Columbia University has gentrified Harlem. And as a Columbia University alum, right, recognizing those disparities and really having to ask yourself the question about what does it mean when we talk about equity? What does it mean when we talk about untold history and untold stories without feeling as though we are captive in a lot of ways to a history that has deemed marginalized communities in particular as less than. We have to reckon with that, right? Like we don't operate in a silo of 2020. 2020 is connected to 1963, the March on Washington, 1964, and 1965.
100%. You are somebody who is on the front lines. You're the person who is actively marching and actively advocating and fighting for these marginalized communities, including ourselves. Understanding there's a multitude in our narratives. That is what is going to help liberate us. Everyone's like, everything sucks because of 2020, but it's like, nah, 2020 is the result of all these years and years and years past. I wanted to also go into you as an individual. I like to call you a Jackie of all trades, because honey, you go from activism to you have your own fashion line. First off, what is your main motivator in life and what gets you out of bed each morning?
The reason why I created my clothing brand was because I recognized that there was a gap within the fashion industry between how women of color were honestly being represented. Truth be told, like I don't necessarily have, all of these brands in mind that I think do a great job of representing women of color as dualities, right? Like we can go to brunch and turn up with our friends, but we also like business professional wear. For me, like my fashion brand was a representation of myself. I would say my purpose would definitely have to be to disrupt and create change, but create change sustainably. I really like the fact that you spoke about earlier, right? This idea of liberation and what does liberation mean to me? And for me, it's being able to use all of my talents and resources and passions and put it together to create change. A lot of people don't know is that we believe my national leadership pipeline for women and girls of color actually came out of the first wave of Black Lives Matter protests, being a student at Columbia and my co-founder Akua Obeng-Akrofi. And we were like, you know what, like as Black college women, we want to make sure that young girls have the opportunity to have a space to heal from this and also feel empowered and feel like they can be agents in their communities, because truth be told, there's not enough of us at these elite institutions. There's not enough of us at the tables where decisions are being made about our lives and our communities and our bodies. And so that's why we launched We Believe.
George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, these are the murders that really sparked outrage in 2020. Tell me your initial reaction.
I actually had went out the night of May 30th, which was about 2 or 3 days into the protests that were taking place around George Floyd. It was first and foremost a sense of responsibility to be out there. I was so tired of looking at the media and the only thing that people were focusing on was the looting and the rioting. And nobody was talking about why the looting and the rioting was happening in the first place. No one was talking about the fact that, truth be told, like there have been so many instances in this country where folks have looted and rioted. Like white people loot and riot when their favorite football team wins or their favorite football team loses, or when, like anything happens that all of a sudden you see some cars getting turned over. Let's even take a look at the history of our country, right? Like the American Revolution spurred our current democracy. We applaud movements, how we applaud different acts, depending on who is doing them. I don't think the Black Lives Matter movement is necessarily just right for Black people, which is why I get so frustrated when we have folks that are like, all lives matter, all lives matter. Well, yeah, all lives matter can matter when Black lives matter, because we know that we live in a country where that hasn't been the case. So let's talk about how all lives can matter. When these things are happening in the world, what are you going to say? So went out there the first night, I would say it was just like a lack of leadership. It was a lack of folks who really knew what to do on the ground. Police cars were boxing people in, and people started running, macing and pepper spraying people. Hundreds of people that were running away from police vans that were literally just like snatching people and putting them in the back. The next day, people were just showing up at locations, and we're like, you know what, we need to organize something so people can come out and come together. And that was on the 99th anniversary of the burning of Black Wall Street, May 31st. We posted the flyer at 12 p.m. By 8 p.m., we were outside at Washington Square Park and led the largest nonviolent protest to take place in that night in New York City, and that was Freedom March NYC.
Obviously, there was an organization, but it was also in the spur of the moment. I think sometimes people, no, which is crazy, because people feel like, okay, well, I need to plan several months. Sometimes people have so much blockage before they start anything. You posted something at 12 and then galvanized the largest nonviolent protests by 8 p.m. Action and initiation is key.
The power of social media, the democratization of information.
We've seen Black Lives Matter start before, but then it kind of died out. What's going to make this one sustainable?
Yeah. When I talk about the movement being sustainable, I think for me, it's really about the work. As soon as we launched Freedom March NYC, by like day 14, we were talking about what does it look like to turn Freedom March NYC into a youth-led civil rights organization. Tap into funding resources to support this work sustainably. What does it look like to ensure that we are creating opportunities for youth who are on the front lines to be able to have a trajectory focused on civil rights and activism where they can grow in their activism? I don't think that if Freedom March NYC was just a protest group alone, that we would still be here right now. I think that it was a combination of protesting, policy work, and thinking through how to long-term show up in the community. That's what allowed us to raise thousands of dollars right in the span of a few weeks.
As a woman, and a Black woman especially, and you touched it, girl, because I be talking about this all the time. We start the movements, but yet very rarely are we the benefactors. How can we put Black women to the forefront?
There's this common misconception that when we talk about centering Black women, that somehow that is an attempt to erase the importance of protecting our Black men, all the intersections, gender, race, identity, and how that comes together. When we stand as Black women, we are standing for the protection of everyone. And you can't say Black Lives Matter without talking about Black trans women. There are just so many intersections. Even with Jacob Blake, he was shot in front of his 3 children. And so when we talk about the importance of protecting Black communities, it is our Black youth that we were talking about. Oluwatoyin Saloh was a Black woman organizer in Florida who was abducted, who was sexually assaulted, and then murdered. She was experiencing housing insecurity, and she didn't get the support that she needed to be safe. Black women, from day one, we've made it clear that, like, if we are going to lead this movement, we need to lead it in a place that makes sure that we are centering as many identities and intersections as possible. Even in our initial conversations with media outlets, tell us about this movement. We're like, listen, trust, and support Black women.
I just want to emphasize the fact that you're legit 23 years old. The way you have been able to galvanize thousands, hundreds of thousands of people is amazing.
Once I get that megaphone, it's a wrap. Just always interesting though, having to turn it on and off. I've seen a lot of pictures and videos that have circulated that have shown me on the front lines. And I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely like this Chelsea, but also like you're kind of like oversaturating like who I am with like this version of like Chelsea, right? And I think that it's important for us to show that we are like sisters, we are normal, like young Black women who like to go out, who like to take pictures,
yeah,
like to, just like be normal.
Give us some of the lowdown on just culture-wise that you're consuming. Are you consuming any videos, books, or is this just a time to just relax for you?
First of all, I definitely listen to music. Beyonce's Black is King. Let's get into that.
Oh,
It
yes.
definitely made me cry, and especially like being on the front lines, like watching it, I was like, this is like the food for my soul that I needed. And I would honestly say Netflix, and like I don't mean like normal Netflix shows. I'm like, give me like sci-fi, vampires, apocalyptic, sign me up.
That's amazing. Even though you're young, but have you had a moment in life where it was like kind of like your biggest learning moment?
I try to like plan things out as much as possible. And I think what I've learned through this movement is like adaptability, stepping into that, even though you may not necessarily have all the answers, and even though you may not feel like you even like belong in this space, right? I think that there's also the beauty in doing things afraid.
What do you want your lasting impression on this earth to be? And then what should we expect from Chelsea in the next 5-10 years? Like
5-10 years?
You're like, girl, I don't plan that early.
Where can I be where I feel like I can create the most change? Like, place me there. The second piece of where do I see myself in 5 to 10 years, which is still so hilarious to me. Just like continuing to do the work, really thinking about how can I reach like even larger audiences and talk about and educate folks on a lot of the issues around racial injustice and women and girls of color. And so thinking through opportunities to do that, and creating spaces for more women and girls of color to lead.
It's really about knowing what your North Star is and then being available. I feel it. Like when I talk to you, I'm like, this girl knows her North Star. Last but not least, Chelsea, is there anyone out here that inspire you?
People on the front lines. Like I would say like young people, I would say the people who I march with, the people who I plan marches with. When you come together, you build community, like you are literally unstoppable. Day 3 of us having Freedom March NYC flyers circulating, there was a non-Black ally who reached out and was like, you all need a website. In the span of 24 hours, we had a Freedom March NYC website.
Who did your logo?
Same person that did our website. Shout out to Laurent. I remember by day 4 being on the front lines, there was this white woman who lived in Brooklyn who was going to the protest and saw so many organizers who were straining their voices. And so she raised all of these funds for like megaphones for organizing on the front lines. And like within 48 hours, like all of us had new megaphones. What inspired me is like the everyday people who have shown up in this movement in such powerful ways and have like been a part of history, whose names you will never know, whose stories you will never know, but history knows, you know, and history is changed and made better because of those moments. And that's what inspires me literally every single day to keep going.
Not all of us can be Chelsea Millers, but everyone can be using your voice and talent the way you can. You inspire me. Like you literally inspire me every day. I'm like, what have I done to help the world? So I will get back to that. Please everyone go follow Freedom March NYC as well as at the Chelsea Miller. Please donate. These women are on the front lines every day and they need your support.
And thank you so much, Dolapo, for having me on The Lowdown with D-Lo.
I just want to say thank you guys again for tuning in every Thursday on The Lowdown with D-Lo. Bye guys. Have you clicked subscribe yet? Karen, I see you. Have you subscribed, Karen?